Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. 2024 was a weird year for video games. There was a lot of stuff that I thought I'd love that I ended up not liking at all. And there's a lot of stuff I didn't expect to love as much as I did and then played it through. And it ended up being some of my favorite stuff this year. So it was an odd one for my personal game taste, but as always, as tradition dictates every year, we sit down and we do the top 10 worst games of 2024 and top 10 best games of 2024. And as always, I should definitely emphasize this, it's my list. It's not yours, it's not anyone else's, so my taste is going to heavily influence this list. This is not the objective top 10 best games of 2024 list, but I'd love to hear yours, so fire away down below, and let's get started with just a quick couple of honorable mentions of games I wanted to play but never got around to, or games that look really good, or I did dip my toe into the pool but ended up not finishing, that I just wanted to give some kudos to. First and foremost is Astrobot, which I did finish. I love this game so much. I feel like it's half a step away from where I want it to be as a 3D platformer, but in the terms of competition for Mario, this is really good. I got the Platinum Trophy for it. It was a really fun time. Wanted to shout out some Astrobot. There's also on this list here, Space Marine 2. This is an incredible video game that just brings back all of the 360 energy, right? You have your co-op mode, you have your single player mode, and you have a really crazy multiplayer mode. I played a lot of co-op in this game, played a lot of the single player campaign, finished that up too, and I just love how this was a real callback to an incredible time for video games that I miss more and more as the days go by. But its dedication to gore, its incredible art style, Space Marine 2 is a must-play experience this year, as is Stellar Blade. I started this one really late in the year, unfortunately did not wrap it up, but I kind of mischaracterized this game. I thought it was going to be more of like a Sekiro clone coming in. Then I played Sekiro in the middle of this year, fell in love with it, one of my favorite action games ever, and then went back to Stellar Blade just a couple of weeks ago, and I love the music and what this game's going for because it's Nier. Nier is the main touchstone here, not Sekiro. So playing it a little bit, I've really started to fall in love with really the world, the music. The story is very Nier coded. In fact, it's sometimes blatant in how much it lifts from that material, but I enjoy it nonetheless and wanted to give it a shout out, as well as East 10 Nordiques. This is one I didn't get a chance to play. I love Falcom. They might be on this list with a certain other series they run. We'll talk about that. They've been on this list for 3 years running. I've never played an East game, but this one looks really up my alley. A mixture of like Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Indiana Jones is basically what I'm getting here with this game's adventurous spirit, action combat, and dedication to piloting a ship around and, you know, just collecting and completing things. Looks awesome. And the last game I wanted to shout out that I had a plan to get to, but unfortunately there were some really long games this year, so it really knocked me out of the race for it, is Batman Arkham Shadow. It's really cool to see VR have such a strong year between this, Behemoth, there was an Alien game, there was a lot of great VR titles this year, but Batman Arkham Shadow, like, this is the only way we could get a new Arkham game, and apparently it's really good, so I wanted to give that some love. So those are some quick honorable mentions. Let's get into the rest of my list with number 10. So is this like cheating? Because I'm not talking about the part I played many years ago in Sonic X Shadow Generations. So when I played Sonic Generations for the first time, your boy had appendicitis. This was a post-surgery world, and this was a comfort game for me. But also, as someone who grew up not liking Sonic at all and learning to love him later in my life, I personally only enjoyed Sonic Generations. That mixture of the 2D and 3D gameplay just worked so well, and especially as I became a bigger Sonic fan as the years went on, the callbacks to all these fantastic stages really did, for me, a lot of solidifying in why Sonic Generations is one of, if not the best modern Sonic game. So bringing it back was an easy win. I was just excited to play the base game again, but I'm actually not here to tell you all about that. The reason Sonic X Shadow Generations is on this list is all because of Shadow, because the Shadow Generations part of this game is better than Sonic Generations, which means it's better than what I think is the best modern Sonic game. This is the best Shadow game to date, which isn't saying much, right? You have Shadow the Hedgehog, he's in Rivals. There's not a lot of great Shadow games. Oh, the Forces DLC, how could I forget how awful that was? There's not a lot of great Shadow content out there outside of Sonic Adventure 2. So all these years later, finally our man gets some justice. I think this story is really heartfelt because if you care about this character, who I think is the best in this franchise, there's actually some really well-written moments, and by the end of the story, it pulls on some heartstrings. I think a lot of people misunderstand Sonic storytelling. It's not supposed to make you break down into tears. It's not supposed to be this, oh my god, my brain just broke on that plot twist type of storytelling. It's just supposed to make you feel something. And Sonic X Shadow Generations has so much heart to it and shows that, you know what, despite what people say about the blue blur or in the case Shadow, the red blur, if you will, he's still got it, man. And between that, the kind of pseudo open world gameplay that you get in this new hub space that really evolves the ideas that were brought to the forefront in Sonic Frontiers, plus the collectibles that are available there and all these trials that really change how you play the game. That is why Astrobot got bumped out of this list, because I found the challenges and the variety and the approach to how I used my powers in Sonic X Shadow Generations frankly far more interesting than what Astrobot brought to the table, which led to it being a honorable mention, which I know is a hot take, but again, this is why I tell y'all, it's my list. I really love the suite of powers between the Doom Wings and how you traverse the stage with those, and of course, Chaos Control, where you have to slow down time at certain points. Like, all these stages, all these trials, I think brought a lot of interesting challenges to the forefront. So this was a really fun one to play through, and that's why it's at my number 10 slot. But what about number 9? Number 9 goes out to a very recent release, and it probably would be higher if I had more time with it, but I feel safe with this pick here. Marvel Rivals. So yeah, this game quickly deleted all of my free time. I have so many games I want to still finish before the end of the year, and here I am playing this heavily inspired Overwatch game. But I love Marvel, always have been a big comic book fan since I was a wee lad, and to get a game at the ass end of the year that respects the character design from the comic books, unlike what we got with Suicide Squad, which was like the polar opposite, was also kind of a crazy realization for me. But really, it's just that I played a lot of Overwatch at launch. I adored it. I played it for about 3 years straight, on and off, with my friends, and we had a blast. With changes to the meta and the lack of support, we unfortunately fell off the game. And then Overwatch 2 failed to bring us back because it was an unfulfilling sequel. So I was ready for more hero shooting in my life, and it turns out I needed real heroes for that. I love how every character in Marvel Rivals is pretty much the definition of busted, and it's pretty much who can make a quicker impact first. I love this roster and its deep cuts where you'll get characters like Magic, but also Spider-Man. I love how well performed all these characters are. I love the interactions they have on the map. I think the maps themselves are really cool. The music's great. The unlocks are great. I just love the team chemistry and how you can do team up abilities and try to enhance each other by working together. It is a formula that seems so obvious on paper. It's almost amazing that it took so long to get an actual hero shooter with heroes in a video game, but here we are. Marvel Rivals has arrived, and I have been helplessly addicted to this game. It is the definition of, wait, just one more match. I typically don't get brain rotted by multiplayer games, but this year was a weakness for me. And in the case of Marvel Rivals, the amount of 4 a.m., almost 5 a.m. nights I've had because of this game for a man my age is inexcusable. Frankly, I should be more responsible and know there's more time to game in the next day, but you just get that itch to play one more time. And just like when Overwatch launched, every role to me is fun. I love playing as the tank, diving in as Captain America. I love playing as, say, someone like Wolverine, diving into the fray, or shooting from the back to midline as I would with Winter Soldier. And I love playing support with characters like Mantis or Luna Snow, who have the ability to heal but also deal out damage, so they're not completely useless in combat. Just the way it's all mixed together, the style, the flair, and the fun factor, it's all there, and I've been having a blast with Marvel Rivals ever since it came out. I was a little worried at first, would this be recency bias? But as I approach my 20th, 30th hour now, I know I love this game, and I know I'm going to be playing it on and off for a long while, just like I did when Overwatch first came out, and it's good to be able to say that again. Number 8 goes to the sequel that I never thought would exist, but holy shit, it actually freaking does, and that is Dragon's Dogma 2. The first Dragon's Dogma was one of my favorites in high school. You know, it was in a post-Skyrim world. A lot of people already had that fantasy RPG itch scratched, but then along comes Dragon's Dogma, and my itch was not scratched. I wanted more. And I saw this game here from Capcom, and I tried it out, and I fell in love. This mixture of Shadow of the Colossus and Monster Hunter, and a little bit of a Souls-like in a way. It was this weird melding of all these hardcore gameplay mechanics where you'd traverse the world without really any fast travel at all, and you'd bond with your party members over time, and they'd learn the world with you through the pawn system. It was so wholly unique that it was a crime to me that the only thing we got when it came to Dragon's Dogma in the next decade was going to be, what, just a re-release and nothing more? But then comes Dragon's Dogma 2, which is unapologetically staying close to the vision of Dragon's Dogma 1. Everything I described to you about Dragon's Dogma 1 is here in 2 and then some. A crazy character creator that lets you make the most fun of pawns, allows you to do the craziest of headcanons. The bosses are bigger than ever. The world is more dense. More than anything, I love how this world is on a timer. This is low-key one of the most reactive worlds that you can play in. If you do not get on top of one of your side quests, time does pass, and in real time, those will fall by the wayside. And so this game is a lot about management. I also appreciate that in a world full of oversaturated open world video games, that this is a big open world game that you can finish in just over 30 hours in my case. And that's doing every bit of content that I could find in my journal, across the map. I adored my time with Dragon's Dogma 2, and I thought it had one of the coolest end games that you could experience. I, unlike many others, were also a big fan of the Dragon's Plague. It had you paying close attention to everyone around you. It was a real consequence to the things that were happening in the game's plotline. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I just appreciate everything it did. It cleaned up the gameplay that I think maybe felt a little bit undercooked in the first game and really refined things. It had that Monster Hunter level of cadence to it where you really had to be deliberate with each attack, every place you struck, and I thought that personally just worked for me on top of everything else that Dragon's Dogma is known for, which is an amazing world, amazing boss fights, a kind of cool, low-key, underrated story. There's just a lot here, but it's just so dynamic and always interesting where a boss can just drop on you out of nowhere and suddenly another boss is fighting another boss and now you got like a 3-on-1. It is such a cool video game, man. So I'm so happy this game exists, and more than anything, I'm happy that since it does exist, it's really good. Number 7, this is one of those moments this year where I was like, hell yeah, I'm so glad you exist, because while it was a year where some of the bigger titles really took over for me, and you'll find very minimal indie presence on this list, I will say that one developer managed to punch above their weight and make the best ever Ninja Turtles game, and that is TMNT Splintered Fate. This is a game that I really wasn't interested in when it was first announced. Oh, there's this roguelike Ninja Turtles game on the Apple Arcade. Pfft, whatever, it's just mobile game fodder. It comes over to the Nintendo Switch, and I remember when I saw that announcement, I went, all right, well, I'm not going to play a game on my phone, but I'll play it on my Switch. Let's see what's going on here. And a lot of the reviews from those who grind the Apple Arcade is like, no, this is an amazing story. The combat's good. It's basically Hades meets Ninja Turtles. And I go, hold up. Hades is one of the best ever roguelike games, if not the best. What are you talking about? And then I played it, and it literally is that. If you like Hades, you will love TMNT Splintered Fate. And this is the first Ninja Turtles game, outside of Shredder's Revenge or Turtles in Time, that I can recommend to you. You go ahead and check out simply because it's a damn good video game and not because you have to be a Ninja Turtles fan first. The voice performances in this game are incredible, bringing in the likes of Nolan North and Yuri Lowenthal. It's like star-studded voice cast for the Ninja Turtles. I love how reactive the cast in this game is as well. If I beat Karai in a boss fight and I take her charm and I equip that charm and I show up in another boss fight because time has moved on and she sees I'm wearing that, her voice lines are different. She acknowledges that. Her boss fight patterns change in turn. It's incredible to see all the little permutations this game offers across its about 20-hour narrative. But also, it's that each turtle feels a little bit different. Raph is really good with burst attacks. Mikey is really good with multi-hits. Leonardo's a kind of jack-of-all-trades, master of none. And Donatello, while slow, has incredible range. When you combine that with a slew of pickups, all these different powers, and the build crafting, plus the permanent upgrades that carry over run to run, make this one of the most addicting games of the year. But I have to admit, as a Ninja Turtles fan, this is what I've dreamt of. A true game that evolves the idea of what a Ninja Turtle game can be. Not just in storytelling, and also leaning finally into more mature-looking Ninja Turtles that don't look like they just came out of high school. Thank you for using the IDW comic book art style. Oh my god. But nonetheless, the other thing that they really nail is just evolving the beat-em-up style gameplay. Look, as much as I love a game like Shredder's Revenge, it was a lot about taunting, rebuilding your super attack, and building off the ideas that were established in Turtles in Time. And I think that Ninja Turtles will always veer into the beat-em-up category thanks to Turtles in Time, but they can be more, and I hope we learn they can be more. But a game like Splintered Fate clearly shows that the Ninja Turtle formula can remain beat 'em up while still evolving those ideas moving forward. And so it's a major accomplishment for Ninja Turtles game, but it's also just a damn good roguelike. All right, number 6. Gotta give it up to one of the JRPG GOATs in Final Fantasy VII. Yep, we're talking about Rebirth. Just this music, man, just makes you feel things, but also This is character writing. This is how I feel real people would interact, which has become, unfortunately, a lost art, at least in Western AAA studios, as far as I'm concerned, where they're written like, this sounds good in my head, but no one actually reads them aloud. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth feels like a game where when these cast of characters interact, there's true friendship, true camaraderie, and as the game expands its side content in a more meaningful, purposeful way compared to the previous entry and remake where, I gotta be honest, just a lot of fetch quests, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a breath of fresh air in that regard. Just getting to spend more time with this cast of characters I love and get to know them on a better level. It definitely falls more in line with a traditional remake compared to what, funny enough, Remake did, where they really expanded the Midgar section and you got to see a whole slew of new things, where Rebirth did have an air of familiarity in parts of its story, but the inclusion of Zack did so much for me. I'm a massive Crisis Core fanboy, so to have this guy in the game was amazing as well. Even if I wasn't a huge fan of his utilization and would have loved to see more for him, when he does show up in big moments, boy does he pack a huge punch. But also, for a company that doesn't do open world often, I feel like Square Enix made a really good open world game here in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Again, because open world games, to me at least, are really mostly defined by the side content. There's a reason you want to be in these big worlds. It's to live in them, go off the beaten path, see what's going on over here or over there, and just chase down the rabbit hole and find something interesting. And so the slew of activities you'll do around the map kind of reminded me of a checklist in an Assassin's Creed game. And as I've mentioned many times before, that's a guilty pleasure of mine. I enjoy that from time to time. And it feels like I haven't really had that in a while, where this struck at just the right moment for me. So when you combine that with interesting side content, really fun mini games, heartfelt character writing, an amazing story that's getting more and more Nomura by the second, and combat that is second to none, I think that 7 Rebirth is just a phenomenal video game. And I especially got to double down on that combat. Each of these character kits is so deep and thoughtful. Their movesets completely different from one another. Just 7 Rebirth is in a class of its own. In a day and age where you're seeing remakes over and over and they're staying safe, this is one of the more bold remakes that can exist out there. I do think there was another remake this year that I'll talk about soon that was a little more impressive, but I think that what Square Enix is doing, they had an easy route and a tough route, and I admire the hell out of them for taking the tough route and doing a couple of different things with the story, and I cannot wait to see how things come together with Part 3. We have made it to the top 5. What is at the top of the top 5? It is Tekken 8. Okay, so we talked about multiplayer brain rot games earlier. I neglected my responsibilities when it came to this game. So what happened was, funny enough, the game I just talked about beforehand, right? Little Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I was lucky enough to have that like 3 weeks early, which is plenty of time to review this game and go through everything it had to offer. So certainly I'd make the responsible choice, right? Wrong. Tekken 8 was out. I didn't get that early, but when it came out, it took over my life. The depth of this roster, the absolute leveling up, the glowing up of its main story. I love the arcade mode of this game. Like, there's so much here, so much content, because I feel like with Tekken 7, they kind of got away from stuff that made Tekken great. For example, storytelling. Like at the end of a run in arcade, being able to actually see a little character story there, that's really great, and that's back in Tekken 8. Of course, the main story, very anime, very action-packed. Love the inclusion of Reina. She, in my opinion, is the future face of Tekken. I hope they lean into her heavily. She's got that cool factor. Like, she is perfect to be the face of this franchise alongside Jin, for example. But man, oh man, if there's one thing I love more than all of that, it's this character roster. You get a deep, robust character roster that I feel has become extremely rare in today's fighting games. I mean, every character really is their own game. And as I put over 100 hours into Tekken 8, I still felt like I hadn't really scratched the surface. These are masters of the craft, doing their absolute best work. The fighting genre, in my opinion, is frequently barren of really, really good games like this. The last time I got this hooked to a fighting game was Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was a mixture of that style and substance that I'm talking about here with Tekken 8. This is absolutely a must-play game if you are into fighters of any kind. Admittedly, I am partial to 3D fighters. I love the way you can maneuver the arena, and I love how the frame data just feels perfect in this game. Like, if you want to bob out of the way of someone, you can. This is one of those fighting games where you can just feel yourself in the shoes of whoever you're playing as. For me, that happened to be Claudio Serafino, as well as Yoshimitsu, and I love my trickery on Yoshimitsu, and that's what I'm talking about, man. That is the beauty of this game, because every character has their own bag of tricks, so you could spend 80 hours on just one character, and I sincerely believe just continue to have fun. The main problem that knocks this a bit down the list is the people who were disconnecting online and how they just weren't prepared for that, where you would lose ranked points for daring to fight against someone, and they would leave, and you get like exit penalties and stuff. Like, it was just so frustrating, where I just resorted to playing private matches with friends all the time because people would just rage quit on me constantly, and I'm not even that great, man. So yeah, just shout out to Tekken 8, a phenomenal fighting game. I know some of the post-launch support was also sketch, and that's also why I got bumped down a little bit on my list, where it was a game that at launch I was so happy with it, and as its life progressed on, got a little bit worse, but still at the core of it all is an incredible game that I spent many a nights and still will spend many nights with my friends playing. Number 4 goes to, I mentioned another remake on this list being better than another one, and that's this game right here, Silent Hill 2. Now, I know there's much debate about can you actually put these sort of remakes on your list, and I understand and respect that. For me, there are remakes like Final Fantasy VII or what Silent Hill 2 does that really has a massive uphill battle in front of them that I think changes the conversation around them. In the case of the original Silent Hill 2, what you are faced with are fixed camera angles and a lightning in a bottle situation. By that I mean that a game like Silent Hill 2 is not meant to ever get the cult following it did. I say this as someone who Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games ever, and absolutely when it comes to the story, I adore it. But Silent Hill 2 also sat in the category for me of games that I would never recommend to people but would quietly love all day long to myself. I say that because the gameplay was just such an uphill battle. The combat, the camera angles, the controls, the puzzles, it all had so many obstacles to overcome to really fall in love with it. And it ended up becoming a you love it or you hate it situation. But with Silent Hill 2 Remake, the way they've gone out of the way to reinvent this gameplay, reinvent its many environments, also add some meat on the bones to it, where this game's clocking in at just around 20 hours when I wrapped it up, and evolving the story without even touching much of the script, which I'll get into. And you have here one of my favorite all-time remakes. What I want to call out more than anything is the motion capture here. Luke Roberts did the performance for James Sunderland here in Silent Hill 2. And James Sunderland is a very complex character facing his demons in this game. His performance as James was one that I was so knocked on my ass by. I genuinely believe it's the best performance you can find in video games. Why do I say that? It's a perfect example of what visual acting in video games can become. When you watch James during certain scenes, for example, when Maria offers him a drink, his glance at the glass and then his hesitation and kind of eyes darting around communicate so much to you without one single word being uttered at you, without a single word being changed in that beautiful, beautiful script that is the original Silent Hill 2. That is what this remake accomplishes, and it's through the phenomenal power of motion capture technology as well as brilliant acting that puts this character in an even higher echelon that I didn't know exists. James isn't the character that you fall in love with because he's really cool or he has a feel-good story. This is a tragic-ass motherfucker, dude. He's got an awful story to tell you, and that is what I loved about this game. No game has emotionally impacted me this year the way that Silent Hill 2 Remake did. When I closed out a session of this game, I felt genuinely, truly exhausted. And that's coming from someone who plays these games for a living. Its tension in its gameplay, alongside a story that will break your heart over and over. There is no moment of levity in Silent Hill 2. There is only depression and sadness and anxiety and anger found in this world. It does challenge a lot of what you typically sit down to consume games for. It is art in its finest form, and it's there in its story that I think Silent Hill 2 really finds its groove, really captures its audience. And now we have this modern game that I can point to you and say, if you want to play one of the best ever survival horror games, you go and check this one out. But it's also the gameplay and how they basically took the blueprint for Resident Evil 2 Remake and brought it over here into Silent Hill 2. You combine that with much more fulfilling exploration, where you get to spend time truly in Silent Hill, explore it for all it's worth, find some collectibles throughout, and what you've got is a really special, and for me at least, unforgettable experience. And in a year where it felt like every game you could just read the writing on the wall, where a game was going to bomb or it was going to underdeliver, Silent Hill 2, upon its reveal, I looked at it and went, I don't know about this. Konami, Bluebird team, this does not seem like a good match, and what I'm seeing is not exciting me. But it over-delivered on every single level, and then some. And that is a rare surprise in modern gaming, but I'm so happy it happened with one of my favorite ever video games. Okay, no more remakes. I promise. We're out of that. We're in the top 3 now. And number 3 goes to an Xbox game. Hold on. Yeah, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So I'm a brand new Indiana Jones fan, all things considered. If you're not counting me playing Emperor's Tomb on the PS2 back when I was a wee lad, then yeah, I just only became an Indiana Jones fan, well, this month? Yeah, I ended up watching all 3 movies in the original trilogy back to back to back. I absolutely adored them top to bottom, and then I had the privilege to immediately jump into my review afterwards, and oh my gosh, what a special experience that was. The way this feels like a true extra movie inside this original trilogy, where you're wondering what happened between Raiders and Last Crusade. Now you have those answers. The way they delicately build upon relationships, like the ones between Indy and Marion, is brilliant. You can feel this is a game where there were just die-hard fans of Indiana Jones who wanted to make something that was so true to his character in every single way, and they were so careful with it. And in a day and age where with these licensed games, you kind of know what you're going to get. They have a formula to them. They have a blueprint to them. Indiana Jones takes all of that blueprint and breaks it right over its knee without hesitation. It is a first-person game focused on immersive qualities and stealth elements. Much of these gameplay systems, I feel, going by the wayside as time goes on. What, you have the occasional, very occasional arcane game that shows up and delivers that, and the last one being Redfall had none of that, and the one before that was Deathloop, which quite frankly, I didn't think was very good. So I had a hunger, a hankering for this type of game where I could roam around, interact with all of the objects in the environment, pick them up, use them as weapons, use them as distractions, but also a disguise system, immerse myself in this world, infiltrate enemy camps, steal collectibles, upgrade books, use the adventure points that I collected from completing those nearby puzzles to unlock said upgrade. It's just a very immersive, interactive gameplay loop that I can't get enough of as I press on with my 100% completion of the game. It is a game far bigger than it has any right to be, but I'll spend more and more time with it if I ever get the chance to. I hope they do DLC for it, because Indiana Jones and the Great Circle clocks in at over 30 hours if you do everything it offers. It has some of the best side quests you can find in gaming, as you get a chance to really spend time with these characters in long-term stories. Not these brief little snippets, these side excursions where you go out, you do a little side quest, and you're done in like 10-15 minutes. No, Indiana Jones, in a lot of ways, I feel, rethinks what side content is with its fieldwork missions. You'll go out, they'll have fully produced cinematics, and really you'll sit down with these characters, complete unique puzzles, have unique gameplay segments, set pieces, all that good stuff, and it feels like it's main story content, but it's actually part of the game's side content that you can totally just miss or enjoy the main story and never touch at all, which is crazy to think about. But this game offers a level of freedom that I feel not many are doing nowadays. And so while it does come with its flaws, there is a right way to play. Sometimes the writing is inconsistent. There is just so much heart and soul to this game, and so much this game does that others don't. It was so easy to phone it in and be like, hey, look at what Uncharted's doing. We're Indiana Jones. We inspired Uncharted. Let's do that. Let's do what Tomb Raider's doing. It was so easy to take that route, and they did everything but that. They literally decided to go in the most difficult route imaginable, and the game is all the better for it. I'm a big defender of this game being in first person. I value highly immersive experiences like this, and the painstaking detail in which its environments are created within just adds so much to the formula of what's already working. Its puzzles, as someone who's not a big puzzle guy, I found very intriguing, very engaging. I was all about everything Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was offering, and that's why it sits in my top 3. Time to get our weebs on. Number 2 goes to the first game I beat this year, and it was my game of the year for a long while, but another one beat it out, as you'll learn shortly, and that is Trails Through Daybreak. So remember when I was talking about East 10 at the top of this list, and I said Falcom will be back, and they've been on this list multiple years in a row. Well, here we are to talk about Trails Through Daybreak. If you've been watching me for a while, and you especially watch these lists, you should have already known about this series, because Trails Through Zero was on this list. Trails Through Reverie was on this list. Trails into Azure, I think, was on this list at one point. Every single time a new Trails game comes out, it's on this list. And more times than not, it's in the top 3. And this time, it was almost my game of the year. It's almost like this is a series that when the Sky remake comes out next year, you should check it out, because it is one of the best video game series on the planet. There is no game that has this long and continuous of a plot that is single player, might I add, and not an MMO, than Trails. This game represents a lot of what me as a long-term fan has been asking for. Trails of Cold Steel brought a lot of anime to the table for the Trails franchise. It was a large departure from what Sky, Zero, and Azure built up to. And while it made the series more popular, I felt it was a series steadily losing its identity, and its best days were behind it. After Reverie, which was a phenomenal conclusion to the Cold Steel saga, it was time to move on to a brand new game engine, a new setting, a new protagonist, and Van Arkride shows up, and this dude is a Chad. What an amazing main character with an engaging story and a hilarious personality, accompanied by the dude bro himself, Aaron Way, who has some of the most out-of-pocket lines in dialogue you will ever see in a video game. Just alone with these two interacting, this game is worth checking out. Like, there are so many clips online of Aaron Way just making Van uncomfortable, and it's so funny. Like, these two are amazing characters, but that goes for most of this roster. This is the strongest I felt about a JRPG party in a long while. It's just incredible from top to bottom what they've done with the character writing in this series, because guess what? They got away from all the anime stuff and they went into the mature world, and this game has death and violence and gang warfare, because you, my friends, are a fixer. You're going around, you're taking on jobs, and you have choice and consequence. All these side quests end with little choices that you can make that determine your morality, which impacts a big stretch of the end game here, and that is so different for Trails unto itself. So there's true evolution in a series that saw very little of it here, and thanks to a new engine, the gameplay's never been better. I've always been a defender that Trails gameplay can never change and I'd still have a great time because there's best-in-class turn-based combat. But here, you have this beautiful mixture of action combat and turn-based combat. So, in Trails Through Daybreak, when you're running around the overworld, just like, say, Metaphor, what you see in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remake, you can engage in that sort of quick action combat. However, in Trails Through Daybreak, you can activate your shard and deploy into turn-based combat, and then it's more positionally based. You have this arena that you can roam around in and position yourself tactically, deciding what's the best angle to attack from. You can link up with party members, do chain attacks. The presentation value of these skills and spells are so much better than they've ever been in the series' history. It is just such a massive leveling up for Falcom on every level that this independent developer, might I add, who's like a 70 to 80 man team, has done something incredible here, because they went on to make this game and then also release East 10 this year. They are on a whole other level, and they deserve the same attention that a Square Enix gets, the same attention that Atlas gets, and it's time we put some respect on their name, which is what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. Please, if you have yet to check out the Trails series, do yourself a favor, look into Sky Remake coming out next year. I think it'll be worth your time. All right, my beautiful friends, number 1. Best game of 2024. I think most of you could have already guessed this one. I mean, it was already in the thumbnail coming into the video, so you know. Yep, Metaphor ReFantazio. Who would have thunk it? No way. Matty thinks an Atlas game is the best thing to come out this year. Look, I was thinking this when I was halfway through the game. I was like, yeah, Metaphor, half of Metaphor is better than anything else I played this year. And that kind of represents the kind of year we were having. But also, it did take me a little bit to fully warm up to Metaphor. At first, I'm like, okay, I've played a lot of this before. I saw the action in the turn-based combat through Trails Through Daybreak. And then also, on top of that, I saw a lot of these storytelling themes introduced with Persona 5 Royal's final third semester segment. I felt the turn-based combat was excellent, but I saw some of that in Persona 5 Royal as well. And I was wondering if a case here with Metaphor was, oh, we have a great game on our hands, but it's also what I call a makeup game for the people who skipped out on Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. They went, oh, I can't play the 5th entry in a series, but I'm going to play Metaphor, which is brand new, and so I'm going to check this one out, and they're going to like all the things that people have been liking for like 3, 4, or 5 years now, but I'm just late to the party. I was thinking it was going to be one of those makeup games, but it's actually not. As you get deeper into this game, as you get deeper into its themes, its characters, its world space, its gameplay elements, the evolutions to the social gameplay systems itself, and inevitably its fantastic ending, plus a very hard, crunchy stretch toward the end that nearly broke my spirit, what you have here is an incredible experience in Metaphor. It was a game that at first I was upset with myself as I was kind of chipping through it over time, but as I got deeper into the game, as the tears started to roll scene after scene, which I am not a crier, especially when it comes to video games, might I add. I have no shame in crying. I truly wish I could cry more, but Metaphor brought the tears out of me big time. And normally when a game brings tears out of me, a Nier, a Kingdom Hearts, it's endgame stuff. You know, I remember the last time I really had a good cry over a game, it was at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. It was the feeling of just like, man, I've been waiting so long for this. And while I don't think Kingdom Hearts 3 was incredible, just to be at that end sequence and see it all coming together was such a strong emotional feeling, just thinking of my childhood to that point in time. But Metaphor was different. This is not something I've waited my whole life for. This was just something that, oh my gosh, like these characters, I care so much for them. The themes are so prevalent and so strong. And it asks a lot of tough questions. And it asks them in a deep, thoughtful manner. Again, something I think is a lost art in today's environment for game development. A lot of writers in game development continuously hammer home points that are so on the nose, so poorly written that they fail to get their point across at all, and in fact piss off their consumers. In the case of something like Metaphor ReFantazio, the intelligence in which it is written, where it is designed to build upon a world here which is trying to chase this utopia, but is also at war with itself and who's going to become its leader, as they're all divided, and it tackles these tough themes from racism to classes to sexism. Atlus games are always about commentary on many of the things they see in the world, and this is no different here. But the way in which it's handled through its robust roster of characters, they sincerely are on an entirely different level from everyone else. And I just can't emphasize that enough. In a day and age where I feel like character writing, plot development, and pacing is done so terrible, it is so nice to know that there are developers out there who get it, who let their stories cook, and maybe Metaphor could be guilty of letting it cook a little bit too long, but by the end, you never want to let go. You develop an attachment to these characters, and that is what Atlus does best. They're like friends you get to know over the course of a long journey, and the way that they've evolved the social gameplay by tightening up the ranks, right? Where these Atlus games would usually have stories that had to be 10 ranks long in Persona because they just had to meet a quota, and so some ranks were throwaway. Everything in Metaphor is purposeful. The way they build these individual arcs, the gameplay perks you get from them, and also how all over the place they are, literally. Like, you'll go all over the continent to experience these stories. You combine a new form of time management with that, and they've managed to evolve the Persona gameplay in a meaningful and thoughtful way. The only kind of drawback for me when it comes to Metaphor, truly, is its dungeons. It's the one thing I can say that it doesn't do better than Persona 5 Royal. And this is another game that just, as a creative, when I finished Persona 5 Royal, I was shook into my core so much. I reevaluated my life, which I thought I was doing pretty good in, but I reevaluated the whole thing and just wanted to create something that made people feel even a little speckle of what I experienced at the end of that game. And they did it again. I finished it. I didn't have to go through this whole reevaluation process, but I finished it and I was like, this is the team that made me a game developer, that made me want to go and chase an idea bigger than YouTube commentary. Not that there's anything wrong with just YouTube commentary, but to go after something bigger. And while there are many games on this planet out there that I do adore, Atlus's games just move me in a way that is so difficult to describe other than to just call them art. You know, from their story to their characters to their gameplay, it's got the fun factor. They're just enjoyable to play and be around, but when that message kicks in and it puts me on my ass and just leaves me thinking about everything from its own world to my own world, that is special. That is a feeling I'll be chasing for years. And the last time I experienced that was the last time I got my hands on an Atlus game. And that was 2020 with Persona 5 Royal. They don't always make me feel that way, but to have that happen back to back from the same team is just something special. So thank you, Atlus, for just changing my life. I can't say that about many developers, especially developers I've never interacted with before. I don't know if they make these games with that intent, with that hope, but I hope if anyone catches wind of this, they know that their art matters, that what they do matters. This is what video games are all about to me. It is a strong impact on everything in my life. And thank you to all the developers who made fantastic games this year. While it was an up and down year, and particularly down for me when it came to a lot of games this year, it was really, really nice to just experience some great ones along the ride, like these 10, plus some honorable mentions. So I'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another top 10 games of the year video. I'm looking forward to hearing your favorite games of 2024 down below. Fire away. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.